Hello, my name is Chloe Folan, and I'm most well known as one of the main public clairvoyant readers for the Rainbow Bridge techniques, and also one of the most public and most well-known teachers of the Rainbow Bridge techniques. And I'm also the founder of Ray Path Healing, which is a technique that I developed and that I'm continuing to develop with prototype test groups. On that note, I wanted to just jump online today very quickly to just give an announcement for one of my upcoming workshops. They are very popular workshop classes. They're extremely popular last year, very popular this year. And I just wanted to make sure everyone's been given plenty of notice for these workshop classes starting. The workshops I've wanted to discuss today are my Buddhic Column workshop classes, and it's the basic, intermediate Buddhic Column workshop classes that I'm discussing that are starting in April of this year. I'm creating this video because registration will be promptly closing at the end of March, promptly and sharply closing at the end of March. So there is limited time to join. And technically speaking, these classes have actually booked out. I was only going to take a maximum of 19 people for these classes because they're very deep, intricate classes. We are fully booked out, but because of huge demand and huge interest, I will open up a limited few extra places. So please contact me soon. And there are prerequisites for my Buddhic Column workshop classes. The basic Buddhic Column technique meditation structure was created by the late Josephine and Norman Stevens, the late founders of the highly prolific and globally well-known Rainbow Bridge techniques. Flawless techniques for enforcing building the light body and healthily reducing external and internal karmic imbalance. Buddhic columns or standing vortexes were another offering, another teaching that they gave that is connected to the Rainbow Bridge techniques. To be able to successfully work with the Buddhic Column techniques, you must have completed Rainbow Bridge Phase 1. So if you completed if you properly completed Rainbow Bridge Phase 1 through maybe reading one of the late founders' books or through the soulone.org website, or you might have completed Rainbow Bridge Phase 1 through classes with me. If you have minimum properly completed Rainbow Bridge Phase 1, you can avail of my Buddhic Column workshop classes, which, as I mentioned, are basic, intermediate techniques, and you must have completed Rainbow Bridge Phase 1 to have a proper, wide, clear central channel with no tapering, no blockages, chakras aligned in the body appropriately. And the reason why that is so important is because your central channel is utilized as a blueprint for anchoring Buddhic column structures. In other words, the observer impacts what's observed. As within, so without. So once you have that proper, very healthy, and extremely important foundation in place of a properly wide, cleared central vertical channel, you can then deepen your energetic expertise for properly working with people clearing techniques and land clearing techniques. Because essentially speaking, that's what the Buddhic Column workshop classes are about. So I'll just bring up my screen share. If you log on to my website, www.chloefolan.com, and I'll put a link below this video. And if you click on the link to my Buddhic Column workshop classes, the information is on my website and has been for a few weeks. And just a bit more detail. So these are 7 classes hosted via Zoom. And the reason why these classes are hosted via Zoom is because my classes are always in very high international demand. So these are 7 once a month 2-hour classes, and they are progressive classes. And I've already been asked if there is a class or two that you can't attend live. That's okay. You can catch up via the class recording. All 7 classes will be recorded for students that have signed up only. That's part of study support materials. And it is important that if there are some classes that you can't attend live, that you do catch up via the class recording, because each class builds on the next. And as I mentioned, this is a proper basic intermediate course in land and people clearing techniques. And I have case studies through working with this technique over more than a decade. I continue to provide these clearings for clients. Very successful, really helps with deep healing for clients and produces fantastic results for clients for land and people clearing. I'm in high demand for, in other words, what I am teaching in even just the basic intermediate part of this course. I'm personally in high demand for with one-on-one client work for land and people clearing requests and sessions. As well as that, students that have trained in this technique with me continue to incorporate this into their own spiritual business practice. The techniques you were taught are very good standalone techniques, or you can incorporate these techniques into other healing modalities and services that you offer. Very compatible from that point of view as well. So 7 once a month 2-hour classes held via Zoom. Each class builds on the next. And there is a little bit of meditation homework in between each class, meaning you'll be given class notes to help you case study track your practice sessions with anchoring basic Buddhic columns, deeper Buddhic columns, and one-on-one work, practice work that you will do with other people that's encouraged, meaning you're encouraged to practice the techniques as they're taught. There will also be healing swaps within the class. So that will be very helpful for people and also very supportive that you're encouraged to do healing swaps within the class. It's a fantastic student support. Everyone really enjoys receiving the healing swaps and receiving healing within what's explored within the classes as well. So that perfect balance of techniques that you were taught for people and land clearing techniques, and then also you receiving healing as well as you practice the techniques with your peers in the class. So the classes start in April, and there's a class once a month right up until October. You can have a look at the website link to check the times and dates. And because I'm located in Ireland, times and dates are listed with the Irish time zone. And again, the prerequisites. You must have completed Rainbow Bridge Phase 1 to join. And what we will be covering in detail. So basic, intermediate topics that are covered in detail. So practicing and honing your skills to create Buddhic columns or standing vortexes in person. How to create Buddhic columns for distance locations and how to do that very successfully. So this is where you're encouraged to start tracking your own case studies. For Buddhic columns, you start anchoring in person, and Buddhic columns that you anchor at a distance for distance locations, and how to do deeper work with Buddhic columns for releasing old programs in locations. And this is a really powerful technique in particular. This really helps to transform the landscape. And this is where you're taught what's called deeper Buddhic columns. That once a basic structure is in place, how to go back in and do deeper Buddhic column work to really deeply transform the location the Buddhic column is placed in. And again, students I've taught this to continue to have their own very real tracked experiences for how deeper Buddhic columns work. I continue to as well. I'm constantly still working with case studies, tracking results, things of that nature. Very powerful technique for creating a sacred space and creating your own blessing technique. And this is also where people are taught to reclaim their own power when we're working with basic Buddhic columns and deeper Buddhic columns, meaning sometimes people believe that you've got to be at a sacred site to experience certain energies. So while sacred sites should always be respected, and just sacred sites are deeply powerful, and especially with ancestral connection, this is how to create a blessing point anywhere in the world. How to make any area in the world a sacred space. How to create a sacred space no matter where you are. How to create a sacred space psychic environment no matter where you are. And Buddhic columns are incredibly powerful because once they are anchored, they remain. And that's because of how you're taught to link with the great Deva of the Buddhic plane, how to work with the Deva of the land where you are anchoring the Buddhic column. So this does involve how to start consciously working with Devas and land energies. And of course, we do work with basic healing techniques for people as well. As part of the classes, we will be exploring the basics of checking permission with divination techniques before undertaking clearing work. So in other words, I teach the basics of dowsing, how to very precisely and very clearly program your pendulum very successfully and get very clear, very precise yes or no answers. And then, of course, advice over how to keep your pendulum clear, how to reprogram your pendulum. I go into that in detail. And again, I sometimes come across people that believe that you need a very expensive or very intricate type of pendulum. I've seen people spend an eye-watering amount of money on some very, in my opinion, overly fancy pendulums, and why they might be very nice and amazing and fantastic for sacred geometry and everything else. You don't need a hugely fancy pendulum to get clear yes or no answers or precise answers. So this is sometimes where people might get a bit frustrated with a basic pendulum and then think they've got to spend a lot of money on a better one. And the problem lies in that that person has never been taught the proper basics over how to clear your pendulum properly, how to get clear yes and no answers, how to program your pendulum. That all needs to be taught first. And then once that's taught, a beautiful basic copper pendulum is all you need. I will also be teaching how to stay in your own psychic space while you give clearing sessions. And this is hugely important. And again, this is something that sometimes is not taught properly. Unfortunately, with the hyper-commercialization of energetic healing techniques, it's now become about how much someone can pizzazz you with an apparent energetic technique, meaning it's all about pizzazz and no substance, and proper basic skills not getting taught in favor of the pizzazz hard sell. So this is why, in my opinion, sometimes energy healers get sick. This is why energy healers can very unhealthily osmosis energies from the client they're trying to work with and support, because the basics are not taught over how to stay in your own psychic space, what that is, how that's done, and how important that is before you even get into how to properly, energetically work with another person in need of healing support. That's incredibly important, and an incredibly important basic missing from a lot of other hyper commercialized so-called healing techniques. Working with raising and directing energy and the basics of working with ruin symbols. As you deepen your expertise through this course in the basics of working with the basics and intermediate skills for successful land and people clearing work, we then get into how to properly and consciously work with raising and directing energy for healing purposes for land and people, and also how to work with what's called runic energy globes, and how that ties into land clearing and people clearing in a highly, highly successful way. So that is explored, and even though it's experimental, I've been teaching people this work for about 10 years, and it's always evolving. And as I mentioned, some classes will involve practicing energetic self-healing techniques and also healing energy exchanges with others in the group for practice. So you will need your own copper pendulum for these classes, and the reason why you're asked to source a copper pendulum, and a very basic, simple copper pendulum. Again, this is where people need to wean themselves off the belief that you need something fancy, that you need to spend a ridiculous amount of money. Nice, simple copper pendulum. I explained why in the classes. So you will need to source your own copper pendulum. It's important that you source your own pendulum. That's important, that you find your own pendulum, and why is explained in the classes. But apart from that, these 7 class recordings and their live classes and all of the class materials are provided. And they're deeply supportive classes where we have a huge potential here for individual and collective healing work. Looking at this from a point of view of a service, can you imagine? And we're a large group, like I said, technically speaking, these classes have booked out, and I'm only opening extra spaces and limited extra spaces because of the amount of people still contacting me to ask about places on this course. Limited amount of spaces. Can you imagine the soul power of a large group exploring and tracking case studies individually and collectively for the techniques that are going to be explored? My goodness, don't we individually and collectively need these energies circulating right now with everything that's erupting in the collective? So looking at from that perspective as well, if you've been seeking a proper energy clearing course to dive into that covers the basics properly, that covers this type of material in thorough, tracked detail, that encourage you to focus on case studies, healing swaps, that you can just fully immerse yourself in. These classes will also be very supportive for something very healthy to concentrate on and focus on, and healing techniques that can help right now if you are seeking to stabilize your environment, reclaim your boundaries, reclaim your energy, how to create a sacred space for where you are right now and within your community. Doesn't the world need that right now? So as long as you've minimum completed Rainbow Bridge Phase 1, please contact me soon. Again, only a limited amount of extra places are being made available. Please contact me through my website, www.chloefolan.com. I'll put a link down the bottom of the video. And please also feel free to contact me with any questions about this certified course. On that note, to the beautiful large soul group that has already signed up and registered for these classes, I'm very much looking forward to connecting with everybody soon. when these classes start on April the 11th. I can't wait. It's going to be such a powerful, deeply healing course, and everyone's going to love it. There's going to be so much inspiration. So many ways that you can integrate and work with the techniques being taught and incorporate the techniques in different ways and work with these techniques in different ways. You'll be getting a lot of personal inspiration through the techniques explored. It's just gorgeous. Very much looking forward to connecting with everybody through the live classes who's already signed up. And for anybody else who would like to join us for the limited places, please contact me soon. I would love to hear from you. On that note, 7 ray blessings to all.